I have been a longtime user of the Nintendo 3DS from its beginnings all the way to what it is today, and I've stuck with it all these years because I believe it provides an experience you are not going to find anywhere else. Yet in 2024, with the recent closure of both the 3DS's eShop and online services, some people might be hesitant to buy one. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you why even nowadays you still need a 3DS and what makes the handheld so special. Now before I jump into this video, I do want to give a huge shout out to Red Pro Club, who is kind enough to send me a new 3DS XL for this video. The consoles they sell come preloaded with homebrew and 3DS games, and I've personally been using the one they gave me to capture footage and research new titles for my upcoming videos, so if you want a modded 3DS that is professionally refurbished, be sure to check out their website below and use my code for 10% off. So the first reason you need a 3DS is for its games. There is no shortage when it comes to the 3DS's library, with the system having a ton of different titles that all vary from one another. It's also worth noting that a good portion of 3DS games are very high quality, with Nintendo putting out some of their best content on the handheld. And while yes, there is of course shovelware on the system, there isn't nearly as much compared to some other consoles. Now this is mainly because of how costly it was for developers to create games for the system, and also the simple fact that the 3DS didn't have many buyers during its release, which if anything set the console up for long-term success, as a good chunk of its library still holds up even by today's standards. I could go on and on about the 3DS's catalog of games, but to keep things short, the system has a quality set of titles that far exceeds a lot of other platforms, making it very easy to find quality games on. And so the second reason for owning a 3DS is because of its ability to play DS games. For those that don't know, the 3DS is fully backwards compatible with just about every DS game, meaning people are able to play all their old DS cartridges, which is pretty awesome, especially when you consider how a lot of systems are only partially compatible with previous generations. Although even with that said, there is still a lot more than meets the eye with the 3DS's hardware. This is because the console is actually capable of playing a lot more than just DS games, as it's able to run virtual console titles from NES, SNES, GBA, and Game Gear. In terms of unofficial systems, the 3DS is also able to play N64, PS1, Virtual Boy, and other consoles when modded. Which leads me into my third reason of why the 3DS is so great, which is because of its ability to be modded. With the help of some custom firmware, the 3DS is capable of doing so much more than Nintendo ever intended. For example, modding the device allows users to play on custom servers, download homebrew applications, install backups, and even use custom themes. There really isn't any limit when it comes to what you can do with your 3DS. Some of the main things I did with mine was get a few different emulators, as well as install a handful of different ports. Some of the various ports I enjoyed most on the 3DS were GTA 3, which runs a lot better than you'd expect, the Mario 64 port, which performs at a steady FPS, and the Sonic Mania port, which is down the road hopefully going to be better optimized. Another thing that I did a lot with my 3DS is install different mod packs for my favorite games. One good one is for Mario Kart 7, known as CTGP7, which adds a bunch of new custom tracks, characters, and extra features into the game. Other mod packs such as Eclipse Smash add a ton of new content to Smash Bros 3DS, which makes the game a lot more fun, and it helps keep it relevant against the newer Switch version. All in all, there are a ton of different mod packs, and honestly, it's a topic that probably deserves its own video, but for those who want to mod their games, the 3DS is really good for that. And so, my fourth reason for owning a 3DS is its quantity and quality. The 3DS might have not been a very popular console at the start of its life cycle, but later on in the coming years, it sold quite well. This meant that a lot of 3DS systems and games were created and are fairly easy to come by. Along with that, the quality of 3DS handhelds make them a good contender for people who like to bring their devices with them. I can speak from personal experience in saying that I've dropped my 3DS quite a few times and I've never broken the system, compared to my original Nintendo Switch that got knocked over on the floor one one time and now has a small crack through it. So while most people are careful with their electronics, I personally think it's a huge upside that the 3DS has a clamshell design as well as solid build quality, because you most likely won't have to replace the system for a very long time. And so the fifth reason for owning a 3DS is because of its features. For starters, the 3DS has a camera, which while it isn't the best looking, still does the job, and it allows players to use AR cards with games that utilize it in special ways. Another feature that the 3DS makes solid use of is the amiibo support. There is a ton of different games that use amiibos, many of which you'd never expect to have any kind of compatibility. One of my favorite games for amiibo support is definitely Kirby Planet Robobot, because of how it uses different amiibos in ways you'd never expect. Nathaniel Bandy has a YouTube video that shows off every amiibo on the 3DS, and it's a pretty good showcase for people who want to learn more. But moving away from amiibos, the last feature I want to discuss is probably the one that almost everyone knows, which is the system's 3D functionality. The 3D feature was very hit or miss for some people, but is still worth mentioning because of how it can really change a game on the device. For me personally, I enjoyed the 3D feature on certain games, and I felt like it can sometimes improve the graphics, making them look a lot sharper. Now granted, I don't always use the 3D, and for certain titles I do leave it off, but still it's a cool addition to have, and it helps the console stand out. And so moving along, the sixth and final reason for needing a 3DS is because it's a console for everyone. Regardless if you have small hands, large hands, don't like 3D, or you do like the 3D, there is a system model that can suit your needs. For me, it's the new 3DS XL, as I find the non-XL one cramps my hands, and I like the design a lot more than the regular XL version. In any case, the 3DS is not just a one-size-fits-all handheld, as it's very accommodating even in terms of its games. As discussed before, the 3DS has a large library of titles, many of which vary greatly from one another. It truly doesn't matter if you aren't into Nintendo games and you've never touched a 3DS before, because you're guaranteed to find at least one single game that you like on the system, which makes it perfect for just about anybody. And to prove that point, I thought it would be nice to show off a few popular games that I would recommend for people who are just getting into the 3DS. So the first game I would recommend is Planet Kirby Robobot. This is a solid platformer that makes great use of the handheld's 3D, giving players a ton of content and levels to play through. The game has some of my favorite amiibo support, and it does an excellent job at being creative with such a simple idea. And so the next game I'd recommend is Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater. With the upcoming remaster of Snake Eater not yet released, this version on the 3DS is still the best to date. It features a ton of new unlockable content and the addition of 3D visuals, which really make it stand out. And so my next recommendation is Ever Oasis. This one's an RPG that contains a lot of content packed within, all while having some of the best graphics on the handheld. The game feels like a hybrid between Animal Crossing and Zelda, making it perfect for anyone who is looking for a more creative RPG. And so my last recommendation is Cave Story 3D. Many consider Cave Story to be a perfect platformer, and this remake on the 3DS only makes it better. It keeps all the original content while adding a small amount of new stuff for players to find, so if you haven't played Cave Story already, this is a good way to play it on the go. And so that wraps up my recommendations and my video. The 3DS is one of my favorite systems of all time, and hopefully I was able to convince some people to check it out if they haven't already. But as always, I'm sure I missed some stuff about the 3DS, so if I did, please let me know down below in the comments, and feel free to give me some recommendations on things to check out on my system. And well, with that said, I want to thank you for watching all the way until the end. Please subscribe if you like my kind of content, and I will see you very soon. Bye.